attraction, like hiring, somebody, like a Playboy Playmate type of princess, But he didn't want that because he said, I made a conscious decision that this is not going to be for teenage boys. This was going to be a Disney movie. It's going to appeal to 9-year-olds, or 6-year-olds even could like the movie. And he wanted somebody that was spunky and believable as being able to stand up to Darth Vader. Somebody who had a certain strength. Carrie had that. And he said, anyway, this is basically a Disney movie. He didn't mean literally, but, Disney had this business model where they made these animated films, like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So they bring it out, and then they put it away for 7 years, and every 7 years they would bring it out again, because there would be a whole new crop of 7-year-olds to go see the movie.
Yeah.
So this is his idea for Star Wars, that he was going to release it every 7 years and get a whole new bunch of kids. We didn't realize they were making a movie that appealed to the 9-year-old inside all of us.
An adventure unlike anything on your planet. Star Wars.
Here they come.
To go back in history a little bit further, I was asked to shoot the first one.
Oh.
I was approached by George Lucas, and I went to meet him at 20th Century Fox in London. And I had said to him that I have to be truthful. I don't have experience in visual effects, and you probably should get the guy who photographed 2001. And Lucas said, well, you're probably right, but he's not available, so I'm interested in working with you. But the studio felt that this young George Lucas, who was not experienced, he only had one film behind him.
Yeah.
Before making Star Wars, that he should be put together with. He should work with a more experienced cinematographer.
I was the 4th editor hired. The first editor was an English editor, UK editor, who George was not happy with working with, and was unhappy with the cut that he delivered. And when they finished principal photography and left the UK to go back to the United States, they decided to let him go. And George's wife, Marcia, was to be one of the editors, and Richard Chu, who was a California editor, had been hired to work on the film with her. I was working on a picture called Carrie with Brian De Palma at the time, and when George and Marcia left London, they stopped in New York for a few days on their way back to California, and we screened a cut of Carrie for them. And after they left, a couple of weeks later, I got a call from Marcia. She said, it's really not going as fast as we'd like. Are you available to come out here and help us work on the film? I had to finish Carrie first, which took me to the end of September. So then I went up to Northern California where they were cutting, and Richard and Marcia and I started cutting the film together. We were recutting. We were, going over and fixing the cut for October, November, December. And at the end of December, I was only hired to the end of December, so at that point, Martin Scorsese was cutting a picture called New York, New York, with Robert De Niro and Liza Minnelli, and his editor died. And he called Marcia, who he had worked with before, and said, can you come and take his place? And she went to George, and George said, yeah, I really want to finish the picture with just one editor anyway. And so she came to me and she said, look, I'm going to go work with Marty, and George wants to finish the picture with just one editor. So I thought she was going to say, so thank you very much and goodbye, good luck.
Yeah.
But instead she said, I'd like you to, George wants you to be that editor. And I was surprised because I thought Richard, having been hired before me, was going to finish the picture. But he had the same deal I had. He was only hired till the end of the year. So anyway, so they asked me to stay on, and then I was the editor for January, February, March, April, into May. So as it turned out, by the end of the picture, I had been on the picture longer than any other editor, so they put my name in first position.
Yeah.
And I was the editor at the end also, so I really had my fingers on the whole movie eventually.
Come on, buddy, we're not out of this yet.
When I came on, there was one sequence that had been more or less completed, and that was the sequence when Han and Luke are in the Millennium Falcon escaping from, I guess it's from Alderaan. They're being chased, and there's a gunfight in space where they're in these chairs that swing around. That sequence.
Yeah.
That was pretty much done by the time I came on the film.
Yeah.
And that was done to demonstrate, sort of give an example of what the effects were going to look like in the rest of the film.
Yeah.
So when I came on, Marcia was working on building the end battle. The first part of the job is building the thing you're going to edit. You have to build it first before you can edit it.
Yeah.
So she was building the end sequence, and she had shots of pilots in their cockpits, in the wooden cockpits, the blue screen behind them. There's no motion or anything, and they're just sitting in these sets, and yelling out lines. The lights are moving around them and so forth, and then we had shots of Leia and her crew at the control, wherever they were, at some place, I don't know where they are, and there were no exterior shots. So as a temporary placeholder for the effects shots that were coming in, Marcia used clips from old World War II Pacific Theater fighter jet, exteriors. So you'd have Japanese planes going like this, and American planes going like that, and coming camera going overhead. But the motion in the shots had nothing to do with the shot that was going to come. So you'd have a shot where you see two Japanese planes going like this, and in the first frame of every shot there was a number scribed, and it would relate to a book of storyboards. What I started to say was each of these black and white shots that she was cutting with had a number scribed in the corner of the first frame. So you'd stop the film, you'd pull it out, you'd look at the first frame, see what the number is, and you go to a list, and you look down the list, and it would say, Vader's ship coming toward camera. And the shot you're looking at is two planes going like this. So it had nothing to do with the action that was going to come. So it was just a placeholder for an exterior shot. All you knew, when you saw a black and white shot of airplanes, you knew it was an exterior. You didn't know what it looked like.
Yeah.
You knew it was an exterior. So watching the sequence was very difficult. It was hard to tell what was going on. And it wasn't until we started getting some of the first versions of these exterior shots that it was able to follow the story.
Yeah.
When I came to work on Star Wars, the film itself was inspired by earlier serials that used to show in movie theaters in the 30s and 40s. And the style in those days was to have wipes. They used to do that a lot. And I suggested to George that, we should continue with these wipes because, first of all, I always liked wipes, but also because it fit the genre. It was meant to be a film that was reminiscent of the old, Flash Gordon movies from an earlier generation.
Yeah.
Very last change we made in the film, and it was quite late in the process. George came in one day and says, I got to make one more change. I said, what's that? I want to show Vader getting away. We showed Vader's ship settling, he was spinning around, and then at the end of the take, and they had a camera, the way they did that shot, the spinning shot of Vader, they had a track that went all the way around the attached to the track. Sorry, it was rolling on the track. And the light was also rolling. They would spin the camera around this track. The actor would be sitting still, of course. But the effect would be that the actor was tumbling around.
Yeah.
It's the opposite motion, you know. So at the end of the take, they had it on a motor on this track, you know. So when at the end of the take they said cut, they would kill the motor and the camera would settle, you know, at the bottom. You know, it had been going like this, and it would gradually settle. And we used that little bit of it settling to suggest that Vader had gotten control of the ship. And then we cut to the exterior of the ship going away, and that was it, you know. So George was thinking sequel even before we finished the film.
Great shot, kid. That was one in a million.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
We had been nominated also by the American Cinema Editors Organization. And I was from New York. And one of the, you know, Marcia was the director's wife. And Richard was Asian. So I thought, you know, the American Cinema Editors in those days was sort of a clubby, you know, old boys kind of network kind of thing, and I thought, well, they're never gonna give us an award. And in fact, we were nominated for Star Wars, and we didn't win. And that was a week before the Oscars. So we'd already been nominated and lost, you know, the Editors Award. So then when it got to that night, I really didn't expect to win.
The winners are Paul Hirsch, Marcia Lucas, and Richard Chew for Star Wars.
And we were up against Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Michael Kahn, who's got now I don't know how many Oscars. Walter Murch for Julia, I don't know, he's got a couple of Oscars. You know, The Turning Point, which is edited by Bill Reynolds, who did win the Editor's Award, and he had won. He cut the Sting, and he cut, you know, he was a very experienced old, you know, insider. And it was a fifth. Oh, the other film was Smokey and the Bandit. I didn't think they were going to win, but they were real, you know, Hollywood insiders.
Yeah.
And we were outsiders. You know, we had no connection. We were young and, you know, unconnected, and I didn't think we would win.
Do you feel any extra pressure because of the Oscar, because the first one was a success? Do you feel any extra pressure for this movie?
No, I felt encouraged and validated, and no pressure at all.
Now, the creators of the biggest smash hit of all time bring you the next episode in the Star Wars saga, The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
I had a number of films behind me. I'd already shot maybe 10 movies, but none of them were big effects movies.
Yeah.
So they suggested he work with the DOP who had shot, a very gifted DOP. He'd shot with Polanski and many other great directors, and and Kubrick as well. He was a very gifted cinematographer, but the two of them didn't understand each other well at all. They, in short, they didn't get on well together. So I was approached about the second one because of that.
Yeah.
I went to the meeting and I said, actually, George Lucas, I can't remember if George Lucas was present. I remember Irvin Kershner, of course. I don't think somehow that Lucas was present. I said to Kershner, look, this is what I said at the first meeting about the first movie, and I have to say it to you again this time. I've shot quite a number of movies now, but I've never shot an effects-heavy movie. I love the idea of shooting this movie, of course.
The continuing story of our band of heroes: Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Han Solo, C-3PO, R2-D2, and Chewbacca.
I enjoyed every day of shooting. I learned an enormous amount about effects, and, well, I still learn whatever I shoot. I feel I'm learning a lot.
Yeah.
But shooting with this particular director, Evan Kirshner, was a delight. He was a man with a really good sense of humor, and he was very inventive, full of ideas, almost too full of ideas, in that he would think of one thing and then immediately think of another. So he was figuratively falling over his ideas. They were all very comfortable with each other on the set, and I think off the set too. So there was a happy atmosphere on the film.
Yeah.
We had more time than you would get these days to shoot the movies, so perhaps there was less pressure. There was certainly creative pressure on us, and I felt, as I always do, pressured to try and do my best in each scene.
Yeah.
But in general terms, the atmosphere was kindly and relaxed.
I've heard that people like Empire, and they admire, and it did go deeper into the characters and the relationships, and it was more polished as a movie. Kirshner was a more experienced director than George, and he moved the cameras, and he did things that George just didn't bother with. And I think that George at that time felt that, well, first of all, he didn't enjoy being the director on Star Wars. It gave him a lot of anxiety, and it was too hard, too challenging for him at that time in his life. And I think he wanted to let somebody else take the helm.
It was a very big scene, a big set. They built a studio stage, especially for that set, and it required a lot of careful planning from my end to light it the way I wanted to light it.
Yeah.
The film stock was pretty slow in those days compared to a digital camera of today, so it required lots of light.
Yeah.
That was the first thing, but of course having a lot of light is not difficult if the production can afford it. It's what you do with the light that matters. So I tried to recreate what I imagined the light in a swamp would be like. I can remember suggesting what we could do to the lightsabers when we were on the ramp.
Yeah.
Near the end of the film, I thought of an idea to make them glow. I suggested we used front projection material that was used for how to describe it. When you drive at night in your car, your your headlights touch a road sign, and it seems to light up. It throws light back at you.
Yeah.
It's the same principle. So we used strips of this material and stuck them to the lightsabers, and I put a very weak light next to the lens of the camera.
Yeah.
Turned it on, and the light from that lamp that was next to the lens came back at the camera in a very strong way. You only need to step a few meters away from the camera, and you couldn't see the effect anymore. It was only visible through the camera.
Back, the dailies were they were coming in very slowly. The schedule was supposed to be 16 weeks, and they wound up shooting 29 weeks. So, and George, who was financing the film as well as producing it, was tearing his hair out, because the longer it takes to shoot the film, the more money you're spending, But, so the dailies would come in, and they weren't that many, it wasn't that much running time, because it took so long. For instance, when I got to London, the first stuff they were shooting was the ice planet scenes, and there were all these corridors of ice, and they had a lot of steam effects, as if it was Kirsch's choice to have a lot of steam.
Yeah.
They're heating it, or the ice was evaporating. I don't know what the idea was, but they're every shot had a certain amount of steam, and they had to control the amount of steam. When they do a second take, had to match the steam from the first take. Or if they did a different angle, they had to match the steam from. And then, of course, there were shots that would hit the wall. There'd be an explosion on the wall. Well, you do one take, and now you have a black mark on the wall where the laser bulb was supposed to hit. So they'd have to stop. They'd have to paint, plaster it and paint over it, and then set a new charge. You have to do a second take. So sometimes they would do 2 or 3 setups in the whole morning.
Yeah.
It was very easy for me to keep up with the shoot, and very often I'd be finished my work by lunchtime.
Yeah.
I would wander over to the set, and they'd say, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I'm out of film. I need more film. Give me more film."
Yeah.
This did not endear me to the crew. They were not happy to see me.
He told me you killed him. No. I am your father.
None of us were told about it.
Wow, that's so.
Until the last moment.
Yeah, that's.
Maybe the day before.
Well, first of all, it wasn't in the script, so the actors didn't know the lines. I mean, David Prowse, who played Darth Vader in the costume, he didn't do the voice, but in the costume, they gave him some other line. So and the crew didn't know what, it was only after we finished shooting and we were cutting the scene, and George said to me, "That's not the real line. This is the real line." So it wasn't hard to keep the secret. It was just like, just James Earl Jones reading a different line.
Yeah.
Everybody tells me that it's the best of the lot, and of course that thrills me. I'm always delighted to hear that.
Yeah.
And it's very gratifying to have shot a movie which so many people still love, and so many people have seen, and it seems to have excited a lot of people who saw it.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. But I think the first one, you have to give credit to the first one because it invented everything.
Yeah.
It was all fresh, and what I like about that first film is it's very sort of sincere and full of humor as well. The later films sort of got away from that. I mean, Empire still has some of that humor, but as time went on, I think that sort of got washed out of the series somehow.
I was obviously a big fan of the first one. Same thing with Empire Strikes Back. Although, you had a better idea what to expect by then. Watching Empire Strikes Back was when I decided that I was going to leave New York and go to California. I said, I'm pretty sure I can get work with.
And you did.
With Ed Catmull because he was there already, and I made up my mind to do it at that point.
Your father is.
Your father was seduced by the dark side of the Force. You must face Darth Vader again.
The Return of the Jedi stuff happened because there was a scene in the script that had Admiral Akbar addresses the troops, and they said we need something, we need visual aids for this, and they had done some stuff with computer graphics in A New Hope. There's a similar scene in A New Hope that Larry Cuba did animation for, and they said, well, we want something like that, but better. Bill Reeves and I, answered the call there. The two of us were working on the first version of what would become the Pixar animation system at the time. I don't think a lot of people noticed, but Return of the Jedi is basically a remake of A New Hope. The story is pretty much exactly the same. Definitely the part that I was involved with is recapitulating the scene in A New Hope where where they explain what's going to happen to the rebels, and that scene is kind of in the movie because the second half of the movie is pretty complicated. There's sort of three different threads of action, all converging, all cut together in a pretty complicated way. The movie is to a large extent directed at young children, kids and teenagers who may have trouble following something that complicated, and they want to explain to you before this stuff happens.
I have been expecting. It's a trap. Take evasive action.
I think we spent about 3 months total doing it, but we started by writing the animation system. We had no software to do this stuff, and you couldn't buy software that does things then. So we had to make it all. We started by putting together the animation system, and then Bill and I designed the models. Basically, anything that's round in those displays is something that I did, and anything that's not round is things that Bill did. So the sort of cutaway part of the Death Star that's not finished yet, Bill did that. All of the passageways and tubing and stuff inside it, he did that. But the outside surface where it's round, I did that. The planet that's round, I did that. The force field that's round, I did that. It's a weird specialty, but that was what I did. The crew there was mostly pretty young, and they were all having a great time because they knew they were working on a great movie. And they had a substantial budget, so they were building the machines that they needed to build to do amazing things. There was a lot of excitement, and there were a lot of great artists.
A young kid, about 22. I was a gymnast. They were looking for agile little people for the Ewoks. We didn't know what we were really trying out for because they were trying to keep it really secret and everything like that. So we were just trying out for a movie that was going to, he said, was going to be like a standalone. So we were just trying out for things, and in college I was not only a gymnast and like a wrestler, but I was also a street mime. So when they said, improvise, I went kind of nuts, and I was just doing some crazy things. I did an incredible, because I got the part, so I could have done the same thing and not got the part, but they hired me. I was with three other really professional stuntmen, and I was the one that was the kid. And then two of those guys went off and did other projects. So now all of a sudden, I'm like the second best stuntman. But for this character, I was a little bit more agile, and so then all of a sudden I became the number one guy. And so I did all the up in the trees, I'm doing all the rope swings, I'm battling the stormtroopers, I'm doing the gymnastic moves, flying with explosions and things like that. So I kept working, and it was very, very hot. It was an outfit of not only the fur coat, but there was a fat suit underneath that. Then we had the latex gloves, those latex feet, and the latex head, and with plastic eyes. And then those eyes, because our body heat was so hot, it would then just fog up, and then we couldn't see anything. So we're running through all these explosions, trying to do hand-to-hand combat, and we can't see anything. I was constantly going from point A to point B. We had 5 different units running.
Yeah.
And I was going from each unit. I was going from Unit A, Unit B, Unit C, Unit D, back to Unit A, Unit B, Unit C, Unit D. And so I kept working.
When it was being shot, it was called.
I think it was Blue Harvest, something like that.
Blue Harvest, right? Yeah. And all of the signs and stuff suggested that it was some kind of horror film. And yeah, they were worried that that hordes of fans were going to overwhelm the location shoots. In fact, people found out about it, and there were small crowds of people that came out to watch them shooting in the desert down in the Mojave Desert in California.
The secrecy of the movie, we signed what is called a non-disclosure form.
Yeah.
So we couldn't talk about it and anything until the movie was actually released. And the movie was called Blue Harvest. Everything around was Blue Harvest. There was not anything that said Revenge of the Jedi around. On all the truck placards, on anything of mail correspondence, it was all Blue Harvest. And the fan base of people wanting to find out, it's kind of like Christmas. They want to find out what happens, but then they're mad that they found out because it just ruined it for the movie.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a Christmas thing of, ooh, there's my package. Ooh, what am I going to do? Ooh, I want to open it. But don't you want to open it when you're supposed to?
Yeah.
Don't move.
We surrender.
The announced title of the movie was not called Return of the Jedi. It was called Revenge of the Jedi. And there was some kind of, I don't remember now, there was some kind of uproar from movie fans. A Jedi would never seek revenge. They changed the name of our movie. They changed it from Revenge to Return. And Star Trek II, which was called, I guess when it was released, it was The Wrath of Khan. It had been called The Vengeance of Khan. And the producers of the two movies said, look, you can't pick a name that's the same as our name. So they changed the name of Star Trek II as well. And it was The Wrath of Khan instead of The Vengeance of Khan. And eventually nobody used the revenge idea in their
Star Wars.
I once asked somebody, what makes a Star Wars movie? It's not Luke Skywalker, because some of the early films were not about Skywalker, and it's not the actors because they changed the cast. It was about other people. And my theory is that what makes a Star Wars movie is the production design, Stormtroopers' costumes and Darth Vader's outfit, the costume design in general, the design of the spaceships and so forth, the sound effects, and the music.
Yeah, the music.
If you take any of those away, it's not going to seem like a real Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
But you can change the characters, you can change the actors, you can change everything else. It's still Star Wars.